Hey guys and ghouls, welcome back to the Cozy Ghost. I'm your host October, and welcome back to Cozy Ghost Babbles, a series where I get to babble on about any topic that I want for roughly 10 minutes, but we have a little spinny wheel so that I don't just randomly pick shit, so that we can have a variety in our choices. Variety. Right? So let's get right over to the spinny wheel. Let's click the button. Let's spin this wheel. History. History is a broad topic. A big, broad one. Okay. So let's talk about history. Let's pick a specific era of history. Let's pick... What are we picking? What are we gonna pick? Let's pick ancient Egypt. There's a lot to talk about with ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt... Well, it was a span of several thousand years. I mean, there's the whole statistic that Cleopatra was born closer to the invention of the iPhone than the building of the Great Pyramids, and that's because back in ancient Egypt, there were archaeologists excavating the Egyptian pyramids. Like, the pyramids by then were so old that ancient Egyptian archaeologists were investigating them, which is just so cool. Like, oh, that is so cool. One of the things I find really interesting about ancient Egypt, very specifically, is like the history of pyramids and the history of tombs in Egypt, because pyramids were very specifically for like royalty, for pharaohs, because pharaohs were close to the gods. And so the way that pyramids were built actually had like a generational thing. Like, so there was Sneferu, the great pyramid builder. Like, he's famous for his pyramids. But there were pyramids before him. There were, like, not step pyramids, but something similar. Like, the big pyramids we think of are, like, the pyramids of Giza. Like, the big pointy ones with the gold tip and, like, the the whitewashed sides. Like, those are the pyramids that we think of. But those were not the first pyramids. Those are not the oldest pyramids. They're impressive, but they're, like, not the oldest. Because the original tombs were just these, like, sand bricks that were placed in the ground so that they weren't dug up by, carrion feeders, like, jackals. Jackals are very commonly, referred to as animals of the dead, especially in Egypt, and that is because, again, jackals would eat your corpse if you didn't, like, put it in a stone tomb. So that's how tombs ended up, like, becoming a thing, like, and then pyramids were just built on top of that. Like, specifically for pharaohs, pyramids were built in such a way that they could take whatever they needed to the next world, but also they wouldn't be robbed, because there were false doors, there were different passageways. There was a room for which you could worship or pray for the dead, which is very cool. The tomb that specifically got ancient Egyptian history into the limelight for the West was the excavation of King Tutankhamun's, like, tomb, specifically because it was so massive and there was so much in it. And I read an article about how the tomb of King Tutankhamun and, like, what he represented to so many people, because it was not only the reclamation of ancient Egypt, like, people were like, oh, ancient Egypt is global history, universal history, but that was just so that they could whitewash ancient Egypt, because ancient Egypt was not white. Let's get that straight. Ancient Egypt was not, like, black, but ancient Egypt was not white. And people always take not white to mean black, which has some interesting roots, like that perception. But that's not how it works. Like, Egypt was very, very much... Egypt is very much a part of the African continent, but it's also a part of the Middle East, especially in the way that people look, in the way that culture's formed. Like, to call ancient Egyptians black or white is to water down the vast culture that Egypt had and does have to this day. But to talk about, like, the pharaohs as if they were one race is just not accurate, because the pharaohs were not one race, they were not one family. Like, talking about Sneferu versus the first king versus Cleopatra, those people were all very different. Cleopatra was of the Ptolemy line, and the Ptolemy line was Greek. Sneferu was not Greek. But, like, there's a lot of layers to ancient Egyptian history, and the way that different pharaohs interacted with the people, and the way that Egypt as the lower and upper kingdom existed. Which is funny, because the lower kingdom was up here and the upper kingdom was down here. Hilarious for me, because the way that the Nile flows is actually the opposite. And the Nile, I don't care what anybody says, the Nile is the longest river in the world. If someone asks what is the biggest river in the world, that is the Amazon. The longest river in the world is the Nile. I will die on this hill, and probably many others, but this one specifically I've been dying on since I was in middle school. That's not the point, though. The point is, the Nile River was at the focal point of a lot of Egyptian, ancient Egyptian beliefs and knowledge. Like, for example, colors. In ancient Egypt, black was the color of life, because that was the color of the Nile-flooded banks. The banks where you would farm and where life would flourish. The black soil, that is the color of life. Red is the color of evil and death, because red was associated with the dry desert, with jackals, like that. Those were the colors that, like, were evil. That's why the god Set was red. That's why, like, evil is just depicted as red in ancient Egypt, which is very cool. Also, the Egyptian gods are really dope, because not only do they have animal heads, which is dope because of the representativeness of animals in ancient Egyptian culture, but because of the way that they work, in that there's no, like, this is true for all mythologies, there's no one story, right? But there's no one continuity, really, for ancient Egypt, because, like, Ra is the creator god, the founder god. Egypt was an island, and then there was the dark raging sea, and then Ra was the light, and Ra created moisture and air, whose names, it's Ptah and, I cannot remember what Ta and Shu? No, I'm wrong. Shu was one of them, though. Shu was the air, can't remember what the moisture was, but they got together and they had 2 children, Nut and Jeb. Nut is the sky, Jeb is the earth. They fell in love, but they weren't allowed to have children, so they're separated. Like, so the sky and the land can never touch, even though they're in love, but they did have children. But Ra said that they couldn't have children on any day of the year, any of the 365 days of the year, 360? 360 days of the year. Because Nut and Jeb, like, were in love, and Nut gets pregnant. So she's preggers, and she's like, I want to give birth to my children, but, like, I can't on any of these 360 days of the year. So she gambles for time with the moon god, and the moon god, I don't know why, but he's in control of time. So she ends up winning enough hours to add 5 extra days to the calendar, and those 5 days are the days she gives birth to each of her children. I don't remember the order, but it's Osiris, Isis, or Aset, Set, the god, Horus, and I want to say Nephthys? She's the 5th of the gods. Osiris and Isis get married, and they're like very important, because Isis is the goddess of life, and Osiris is the god of the dead, because he ends up getting killed, but Set wanted to marry Isis, but he's always competing with his brother. So he's married to, I think her name is Nephthys. Please call me out if I'm wrong in the comments. And they get married and they have a son, Anubis, but Anubis might actually be the son of Osiris and not Set, which again, complicated. And Horus, I can't tell if it's Horus the Younger or Horus the Elder. It must be Horus the Elder because there's multiple Horuses, but I think Horus the Elder. But there's also Horus who works as the same. He's also the son of Osiris and Isis because Set tricks Osiris into getting into this coffin and then nails it shut and sends him down the river, and Isis loses her mind trying to find him. And Set chops him up into like a million little pieces and scatters him around the world. And Isis goes and puts him back together, but she can't find his phallus, so she creates it out of... So they get frisky with his corpse. But he's like slightly reanimated because of whatever. So she ends up getting preggers. Don't ask me how, but she does. And like has Horus, and then Osiris has to go become the god of the dead and whatever. But then he becomes besties with Anubis down there because Anubis is a lesser god. Like, he's not lesser, but he's like a lesser god in like their rankings, you feel me? And that's how that ends up working. But the gods are very important, especially in like the fact that they're always battling, because Ra just kind of steps back. He's like, you know what? It's fine, y'all. Like, I'm just gonna go ride my boat in the sky and then ride my boat across the night. Like, Amun is trying to kill me, but it's fine, y'all. No, not Amun. Amun's different. Apep, yes. The snake trying to eat the sun. And Bastat's trying to, like, kill the snake because that's, like, her duty. She's the goddess of cats. But then there's the whole issue of divine time and mortal time in ancient Egypt, and it's just super fun and confusing. And there's so... I've, like, jumped from topic to topic here, talking about ancient Egypt, but I really like talking about ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was one of the things that I, like, studied when I was a kid. Like, I have so many books about it. I listened to lectures. Like, I was obsessed. But my time is actually up, and my time is up 2 minutes ago. So I'm gonna have to end this episode here. I hope you've enjoyed our conversations about ancient Egypt. I hope I've sparked an interest, maybe. Fact check me in the comments if you know more than I do. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you did too. Bye!